It down.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sitton Football Uncensored podcast featuring me, Joe Mealing, answering the questions to the man, the myth, the legend, John Sitton. How was that, John? All right?
Well, no, you're asking them. You're not answering them. You know what I mean? This is what happens when you have 3 days down in Bournemouth with your girlfriend. You know what I mean? You got people screaming at me last week, where's the podcast? I said, don't worry, we'll be in early next week. We'll do 2, maybe 3 episodes, and we'll bang them out to make up for last week. Many apologies. And I'm explaining your CV. You're having to fill in for people. So anyway, don't worry. You got it done.
They did say I was a professional. They said I seemed like a professional. So, you know.
Professional what, though?
They're loving my work. They're loving my work, mate. This time next year, I'll be on Sky Sports. Speaking of which, the European Super League, I don't think we can talk about anything else other than that for the moment because it's the biggest story to hit football in the last 30 years, potentially.
Story. You're saying there's nothing else we could talk. I said I was going to come on and say, what are we going to talk about? It's been unbelievable with the league program, the aftermath of the international break, then the league program, then Chelsea bouncing back, then they're doing the thing in the cup semi-final and they turned City over, which is what I've been saying since Pep's been here. I must have watched at least 3 City games under Pep and said, this is how you beat them. Lo and behold, someone sussed it out and done them, and it could have been 3 or 4. And then, like you say, breaking news with fake news, in my opinion.
You don't think it's going to happen?
Well, no, I mean, I knew I was going to talk to you. I said to me, Mrs. She'd done dinner early, so I've had a nice Sexton Blake with chips and mushrooms, and then I'm in the kitchen making a cup of tea. She calls out to me, look what's just come on the news, she said. Chelsea have pulled out. I mean, the only people who were going to profit out of it initially were the lawyers. I mean, I don't know if I'm right in saying it. I don't know what, cause I think she was watching one of the news, ITV London News we was watching ITV News, then it goes to ITV London. So then you've got the mayoral party political broadcast from all the prospective mayor candidates who all talk their own version of waffle and bullshit. And I just said, I knew I should have run for mayor of London. Because basically there's a bit in each manifesto that would have made my manifesto. Things like, a mandatory 5 years for carrying a knife, Lawrence Fox. Then you've got Sean Bailey talking about how much it is to get into London. And now businesses are tanking left, right and centre because there's no footfall. And people can't come to London, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
You've got even the UKIP guys are sticking up for poor families. Gammon, his name is, talking about poor families who can't afford an electric vehicle. Plus, as I've always said, if you look into the research, it's the creation of an industry because of the nonsensical, mythical, non-existent green issue in the UK. It's the biggest load of cobblers put together you've ever heard of. And now you've got another put together load of cobblers, the European Super League. And throws up loads and loads and loads of questions. I asked a couple on Twitter today. One of them being, having played against them in their A-day on 5 occasions. 4 occasions. 5 occasions, although I was injured for one. Ergo, Everton Football Club, why are they not in the top 6? Because they've won bigger trophies than Spurs more recently. And I think we can safely say the only reason Spurs would be in the big 6 is because of the money they borrowed from the bank to build the stadium.
Yeah, I think it's income. I think it just seems there was a list just based on gross income and profit, and Spurs was higher. But it is
higher than Everton's.
Yeah.
What for? What 1 season?
What
was their capacity before they redeveloped the ground and turned it round?
I don't know, 32,000.
And surely the extra income would be cancelled out by the interest payments on the money they borrowed to build the thing. But you're right. That's right. You're right. It's all about turnover.
It's all about income, isn't it?
Yeah, rather than silverware, obviously.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at the clubs. Where was last time Spurs won a European Cup? 1960. When was last time Arsenal won?
No. In my era, they won the UEFA Cup. One of my ex-teammates, Paul Miller, he was at the back with Graham Roberts. Had a very good side when they won the UEFA Cup.
I know, but that's not European Cup, though, is it?
Well, they've never won the European Cup. They won the cup when they
won.
They never won the European Cup. Spurs have never won the European Cup. God, you need to sort yourself out. I think she's done some damage over the weekend.
Well, I was actually listening to Calderon, the previous president of Real Madrid. I was
Yeah.
thinking it was a double in 1960 and 1961, but it obviously wasn't. But in any case, they haven't won the European Cup then. Arsenal haven't won the European Cup. Ajax have
That's
won
right.
4, and they're not in it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to
So,
say, what about the French clubs, the Dutch clubs, the German clubs?
well,
They've give it a swerve.
the
I'll tell you
German
what. Sorry, Joe. Go on.
I was going to say the German clubs is that 50+ rule, isn't it, where shareholders only have 49% ownership of the club, and it's the fans that have that 51%.
Oh, I ain't been proved right again, have I?
Well,
See, listen what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say on this podcast, right? I should have had more respect for the way I trained by certain managers. I should have had more respect for the way I played by certain managers. I should have had more respect paid to me when my contracts were renewed. I should have had more respect as a coach, and I should have had more respect as a manager for what I did for Leyton Orient Football Club in staving off relegation and then turning a 520 grand deficit into 170 to 220 grand in the black, right? And also should have more respect, or should be shown more respect for my foresight and what I've said in the past about the future and in the past about current affairs. And what I've said is, ultimately at the time, with regards to, so you'll probably be too young, but I remember when our green and pleasant land used to have lovely pavements, right? And my miss said to me over dinner, be careful what you say, because you never, ever, ever know. And if you got an invite, obviously I've been begging, crying out to be invited to the party as a pundit, because I've got very little time for pundits. I've got respect for a few pundits, but there's nothing that a pundit can enlighten me on.
Who have you got respect for? Who have you got respect for?
Well, before I come to that, I would be able to enlighten them, but they wouldn't be able to enlighten me, right? Because they ain't told me anything in all the years I've been listening to punditry, that not one of them has ever told me anything that I didn't already know, or didn't already see, or I didn't already recognise. I would beg the question that if I was on it, I would do the exact opposite. So I would love to have been invited to the party, but I just think like people like Wright and Neville with their outbursts, and then Alan Smith talking like a woman. Oh, I've woke up so depressed about this and about that. At the end of the day, they've been living out of punditry for certain media outlets, and like I said, the opening thing, I remember in our green and pleasant land used to have lovely, like wonderful pavements. And I remember, you're too young to remember, I had a young family, and I remember taking me coaching badges, and I remember being out every night working, grafting for extra money because I was underpaid at certain football clubs. And I bought into Sky because all our beautiful pavements and our paved, what the Yanks call ironically, what the Septics call sidewalks, they're all ripped up. And it's now covered in asphalt. Everywhere you go, it's covered in asphalt. And you need a fucking guide dog just to walk to the post box. You know what I mean? So you don't fall arse over tit, right? So the bottom line is, I did subscribe to Sky, and I got hooked, right? I got hooked because I thought a bit of football and a bit of 24-hour news for me, a few films for me and the missus when we want a quiet night, and then all the entertainment for the kids while I'm out. Lovely. So I bought into it. I got hooked. I bought in, and slowly but surely they went bump, 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 bump. And I says, no, fuck it, enough's enough. So I'm talking from a position of principle and a position of strength with regards to not subscribing to what would have been the initial Super League, which was the Premier League. You understand? Where certain clubs negotiated and people within their clubs negotiated for themselves. Like Lord Sugar, he confesses the fact that he'd done a deal with Murdoch. I'll get you over the line as long as I'll get the deal for the dishes. That's my point. Okay. And it's part of the hypocrisy within football.
So just on that question, just on that point about the formation of the Premier League in '92 and the arrangement with Sky B as it was then, do you think that the Premier League though has had a positive impact on English football? Do you think we're better off for it? I.e., sometimes do you need to change?
What aspect of it are you talking about?
Well, I'm asking you the question. Is there any aspect of the Premier League that's brought about positivity to the English game? Has it improved it, or is it all negative?
No, it's not all negative. No, of course it's improved. You've had unbelievable imports like Cantona, unbelievable imports like Bergkamp, Zola, these type of people. The pretty boy, what's his name? The winger, the left winger for
Ronaldo.
Ronaldo, not as pretty as the one I'm thinking of.
Ginola.
Ginola, the one who played for Spurs and Newcastle. These type of players, they've got people out of their seats. Do you understand? Now, look around. How many players, as there's more and more millions and millions and millions come into the game, and the beneficiaries, one of the main beneficiaries have been another thing that I said through foresight, this is going to be to the detriment of our game because it's money going out of the football pyramid that will never be seen again. I did it on a podcast with the Pitch Talk boys. I'm going back 2000 and I think I'm going back well over 10 years. And I think it was 2000. Anyway, I forget when it was, but the bottom line is I said it's going to be wherever, Switzerland, the Caymans, the Bahamas, that money's never going to be seen again. And at the time I was talking, over a period of something like 18 months, $250 million had gone out of the English game. Right. So it's like it's like society. A microcosm of society, Bill Songhurst once said to me, 1985, Leighton Orient physio at Leighton Orient. He said, football's a microcosm of society. So what it's become an intricately woven web, right? That's underpinned by a cacophony of bullshit. And there's like a very low percentage of people who are benefiting massively from what's been formed. In answer to your question about the benefits, right, if you're looking at managers, I think the only foreign manager that's come in and made a massive impact and told me something that I didn't know, showed me something I didn't know, and as a consequence, the world and his wife are trying to coach the same thing, right? And A, they haven't been coaching it all their life, so they can't coach it. And B, if they could coach it, they can't coach it with the players they've got, and yet they're still trying to do it. That's Pep Guardiola, right? Wenger, circa 1967, 68, 69, all the way through to 1975, so a period of about 8 seasons, Wenger did absolutely nothing different to what Malcolm Allison did 30 years before he got here, right? So he was probably like a student running around the borders of France and Germany. You know what I mean? Before Allison was doing it before he even got here. Klopp pressing from the front. Well, I copied it from and enhanced it from a coach that I was under, who copied it from Liverpool in the first place when they used to do it under Rush. After that, I'm struggling because it's a case of he's talking about it today about it not being spoilt. Guardiola, this. Well, it ain't. It's not since you came here and you're able to buy up supposedly in inverted commas the best players in every position as a consequence of state-funded football. You understand what I mean? So it's like, it depends where you want to go. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go with regards to managers and coaches? Do you want to go with regards to off the field stuff like the structure, agents, technical director, director of football, assistant to the technical director, assistant to the director of football? I mean, all it's done, it's been the creation of an industry as a consequence of Sky Money.
Yeah. Is it, that's an interesting point though, about the fact that arguably Man City have got an unfair advantage, but they have got an unfair advantage, I guess, because of the money that Sheikh Mansour's pumped into the club. So there is an elite level of 6 or 7, well, maybe five clubs in the Premier League that have an unfair advantage because of the amount of money that they've got behind and they can invest in players.
Let me stop you there.
Well,
what, because
let me just ask the question, John.
No, Joe, because there's only
I've
5
got to
or
ask the
6.
question.
Yeah, but what I'm doing, we're jumping a fence here very quickly, right?
I can't get a question in edgeways.
No, you will do. Because there's only 5 or 6. Is it not now becoming boring?
That's what I'm saying to you. That it's already unfair. So why not strip them out of the league and let them play in some bullshit franchise league that there's no relegation? All the money can be frothing around and they can all wank each other off. And why not get rid of them? Because it's already an unfair league anyway. That was my question. No,
yeah. Listen, I agree. I think to myself, if push came to shove, kick them out of the league, right? But it's like he was saying yesterday, very briefly. It tickles me that I could never get a gig, but yeah, because you've got Simon Jordan a bit talk like using analogies like bending over and taking it, right? Yeah. He was talking about the genie being out of the bottle with regards to they've created this environment because they've got these players, they've introduced these players, and they've got to pay them these salaries. So where does the money come from, right? So it's become like a vicious cycle, which goes back to what I said years ago when I first read. They were doing, as a youth coach, they were sending us all these studies. So there was like one study about Italy, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning with breakfast and then something else. And then the first session, then the second session, after lunch, then a third session after a long rest, and then maybe a fourth session at the end of the day. But anyway, there was a minimum of 3 sessions a day. And I said, can you imagine people like players in this country doing 3 sessions a day? I mean, there was a steward's inquiry when I introduced 2 sessions a day, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't having it. They wanted to be in the betting shop or down the snooker hall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so straight away you was up against it culturally. That's the point I make. But like when you look at the situation with regards to this kicking them out and so on and so forth. I agree with you, but like at the same time, also agree with Simon Jordan because the environment's been created now whereby they've come to rely on the money, Joe, to be able to pay these so-called Hollywood signings. And a lot of them, some of them are Hollywood signings. Some of them, I think, are decent players, but mercenaries. So they've got no. I did a podcast over the weekend with the Berlin boys about West Ham, and I said I believe it with any football club, but particularly the likes of West Ham, because I said I think it's been done too wrong for too long. I've always believed in you've got to have a core element of homegrown players within a football club to influence the dressing room, right? And I think there's been too many things. So you've got Hollywood signings, you've got Hollywood signings / mercenaries, and then you've got others who, along with the second one that I named, you've got a third one that I'll name. Let's just call them mercenaries, who basically they're putting UK kids out of work. Because I've always believed, and I still believe to this day, that I think we've got the talent within the UK. What needed to change was the syllabus and access to the players, right? Well, so they've got one, but they haven't got the other because it's still the FA blueprint with regards to the syllabus. Anyone who wanted to take the game forward has been rubbed out. They've been extinguished. They've been dismissed. The likes of Malcolm Allison, John Cartwright had an ongoing battle. He's even written his own books about it. People who were meant to take charge at the FA with certain age groups like Dario Gradi, Dave Sexton, it ended up Terry Venables, very innovative. They've been dismissed. So the bottom line is we've got people who they just buy anything now, and they're actually taking the place of good British kids in the team, just to say, oh, we've got this player with like super duper exotic name, that ends in a vowel maybe.
Within the Premier League, there's probably 5 or 6 teams that effectively run the Premier League, and they're now so powerful that they want to go off and do their own thing. So is that what I'm trying to say is there, obviously there's a multitude of factors, but something like the FA, which you've spoken about a lot and at length about how inefficient, borderline ineffective the FA has been and possibly corrupt over the years, and has done its best to hurt the game, or certainly through negligence has hurt the game. Is there a positive that could come from something like this, whereby the FA has to look at itself and change, or the Premier League has to look at itself and change, UEFA has to look at itself and change, and FIFA? Because you've said at length before, the way in which football is structured isn't great anyway, and maybe this is a bit of a spotlight on that.
Yeah, I think
be fair
really,
to say?
Yeah, well, very fair to say. Again, I should have been shown more respect, because I said ages ago, yeah, we've got an MP for culture, media, and sport, but we need an MP specifically for football. Now, all of a sudden on the news, you've got Boris Johnson talking about, I will do everything in my power to stop this from happening. Right? Well, if you had an MP purely for football, because of the billions that are washing around in it, billions. I mean, he's got balls the size of cantaloupes. He's on the telly talking about cartels. This is the man who, when he was London mayor, he fucking let Uber into this city. You understand? And they've been here for a decade now, and they've decimated this city. They've decimated my trade, and they've decimated my living. And I was just said to my missus, I went ballistic. I said, I hope they fucking die screaming, all these people who have caused me so much misery. You understand? Because when I'm backed into a corner, I'm an horrible, nasty, vindictive fucking piece of work. You understand? And that's what I wish on them. This geezer, he's got fucking balls like this to be able to start talking about I'm not having cartels when he let Uber into this country and into this city when he was London mayor. Right? Be that as it may, I've been proved right yet again, and it deserves some respect. because I said we need an MP specifically. I'm going back probably 7, 8, 9, 10 years now, 11 years, 12 years, 15 years maybe. I said we need, when the fucking billions were washing around the Premier League and I've been castigated and slaughtered and had the piss taken out of me and ridiculed because I swore on camera. You understand? When you look at the cacophony of incidents, of bullshit that people have got away with, what I did pales into insignificance. And like my missus said, well, you know, it's how you say things. She said, there's no doubting it's coming from a good place. There's no doubting that it's full of profound intelligence. She said, but it's the way you word stuff from time to time. But I've been saying for all these years, we need an MP, Joe, specifically for football. So what you're saying about shedding a light on it, someone who's got an office where they're looking at grassroots football. I mean, the latest thing, very quickly off at a tangent, right? They're talking about Clark Carlisle a couple of years ago, or 18 months ago, or a year ago, restructuring. It's out of date, the PFA. I've been saying that since I asked them to help fund me on like a martial arts course to become a teacher, so I could go back to martial arts when I got ostracised from football, because I've been in sport and I've been involved in sport all my life. I love sport. I think sport is a. Then you've got Sean Bailey on here, candidate, Conservative candidate for mayor, talking about how he used to be a youth worker and how he used to keep kids off the streets. I've been saying it for 35 fucking years, 40 years. When they started getting rid of youth clubs, this was the beginning of the end, because kids have got no guidance, they've got no focus, they've got no discipline, even if it's good timekeeping. I said in my book, it's a discipline, even if, quote unquote, it's a discipline, even if it's just good timekeeping. And it sets you on a road, on a pathway for life, on how to conduct your life. You understand what I'm saying? All right, at Chelsea as a kid, I went off the rails because I thought I'd arrived, right? And I got a severe custard pie, a severe smack in the mouth, right? But it's a metaphor for life. If you don't do things the right way, and this is where, like, the foreigners, like your Germans, your French, your Spanish, but your Germans in particular, have always had the jump on the English in tournaments, is because if you chip away, keep doing the right thing, keep doing the right thing, in the end, there'll be an opening. You understand? We've never done it that way. And that's so the point being, if you stay on that path that's set out for you, and you've got a focal point and you've got a leader and you've got a mentor, it can only be good. I've been saying it since I took my badges at the age of 28, right? And before that, when I was 25 and I'd matured and I was captain at Orient and trying to help local kids in and around the Leytonstone, Orient area, Walthamstow, that type of manner, right? So then fast forward, if you've got an office where you've got people at your disposal, like Clark Carlisle said at the PFA, that needs to be run differently. That's been like a fucking ATM for certain people. Unbelievable money for doing very little, right? And the geezer who's meant to be beyond reproach, and he's meant to be a beacon of light, he couldn't walk past a betting shop. You understand? You know, all right, we've all got skeletons in the cupboard and we're crosses to bear. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, there's got to come a time in your life when you have to grow up and do things right. So Clark Carlisle, he's 100% spot on, and I agree with him. And I even might have targeted him on social media and said, if you want advice and if there's an opening, I'll take it. You understand? Because I feel this strongly about it and the future of football in this country. Then on platforms, I've said about having an MP for football. Again, imagine an office where you've got personal assistants and people at your disposal, advisors. I'm talking good advisors, not the fucking idiot I've just seen on here, who to me is no longer relevant. When was he ever relevant? Alistair Campbell, talking about mental health and depression, right? I'm talking about people who have got their shit together, got their act together, and can be forgiven a few F-bombs and a few C-bombs like I've put. You understand what I'm trying to say? So you can take
Campbell's the worst for it. He used to swear all over the top.
Well, you listen. I heard on the thing once, Joe, that he was talking about depression. I once heard a thing, an analogy, a description. Depression is rage turned inwards. Right. So I've felt low at times because the most angry I've been with anyone is with myself. So that would explain that. But with him, I don't know where he's coming from with regards to being Blair's advisor. You've only got to watch the crowd-funded 2-hour documentary, The Killings of Tony Blair. Do you know what I mean? What this geezer's got to answer to, you know what I mean? So fucking let him suffer. Let him have sleepless nights for all I care. because it's no more than they deserve. That's how fucking horrible and nasty I can be. You understand? But the bottom line, and that's when I'm backed into a corner and had my living stolen from me, right? But if we're talking about football in this European Super League now, I honestly think that what it's going to do, it's going to bring like a laser type focus and spotlight on the restructuring of the game, which is what was needed over a decade ago. Because listen, let's have it right. Let's be honest. And it's the only way I can be, which is honest. Supporters, fickle as they are, right? And two brain cells, some of them as they are, right? They deserve and they reap what they sow. They were happy to go along with the Murdoch thing. They were happy to subscribe to Sky. They were happy to pay inflated prices for season tickets because Bruce Rioch signed fucking Bergkamp, whoever. You understand what I mean? At the end of the day. Well, before Bergkamp, there was Charlie George, right? So hopefully you'll take that point, and people will take that point when they see this. But the bottom line is, when I look at this the situation with the goings on, particularly around the bigger clubs, I think there's been a bit like the country and a bit like London. There's been, at best, incompetence, at worst, malfeasance in office. I mean, they weren't too fussy who they took their money from. And the bottom line is, the custodians of the game, let them have access to it. Then you're talking about bigger fish. And ironically, see, I failed to see where supporters are coming from, right? Because rather than wait and be patient, they want success now. They want success. No, not now. We want it yesterday, right? So what they'll do, they'll put up with promises from American owners. And if you look at one club, Man United, they actually remortgaged the club to get their money back, right? Which was like just diabolical. Because straight away, well, even their money, you're putting them in the red. Do you know what I mean? So you had the breakaway club as a protest, but like, that's all been forgiven and forgotten. Then you look at the septics at Arsenal. You could say they've invested a few quid, but then it depends on who you put in positions of power. So who checks the checker? So the people who's given the green light to these signings, where did they come from? Even the geezer who he bought, Wenger, this Edu, some of the signings they've made are laughable. Nowhere near Arsenal standard. Nowhere near Arsenal standard. So they've done an absolute fortune in cold blood, right? But I failed to see where supporters are surprised when they're thinking, if they own these franchises where they're from in America, and if they're powerful businessmen from their own land, someone like Abramovich from Russia, or other owners, Chinese owners, etc., and American owners of places like Arsenal, Man United, when they're used to having franchises and they're getting a dividend from those franchises, I failed to see how people don't sort of achieve the correlation between them taking over a football club in the United Kingdom. They're going to want something to show for it. They ain't come here for the fun of it.
No, of course not.
Understand what I mean? So I don't understand the surprise and the shock.
Yeah, I suppose I was just, but when I asked about whether the government should have more of a role, and basically make it very difficult for these high net worth individuals to buy clubs and use it, and basically have no checks and balances is pretty much as to how they use it. You said no, so that was interesting, because I guess if we don't have the UK government, UK PLC, to try to take some control back over how the Premier League, which is the jewel in the crown of the British economy, how it's run and how it's operated, then we will, if it's not now, it's a bit like the Scottish referendum. They can keep voting no, but there'll be another one, and if this one don't work, there'll be another European Super League, and eventually it will happen, and the game's over. I mean, the game could potentially be over.
Two things, Joe, very quickly to justify what I said with regards to the government, right? We haven't had a decent leader, and even she was hated. We haven't had a decent leader since Thatcher. So if the government can't run the country, how the fuck do you expect him to run football? Right? Who does he think he is, this geezer? He can't even put a brush through his hair. You understand what I mean? And he's talking about. So I'm using that as a metaphor with regards to how shambolic his personal life has been and all the rest of it. You understand what I mean?
Can I just say,
If they
just on
can't
that,
run the country, how can they run football?
no, but what I mean is that the football fraternity that are repudiating this European Super League and that want fans to be more involved in the ownership of clubs or whatever,
Yeah.
can lobby the government to
Yeah.
create a new Quango that's more efficient, that's more open-minded and more modern and fit for purpose than the FA, for instance, because
Well,
it's go on.
I advise someone on social media by direct message at Leighton Orient that they was already in the midst of doing it, but I said that what you need is you need a fans trust. So you got like they'd actually ultimately, I think their initial massive achievement was saving Leighton Orient from folding, from going into fading into obscurity after one of the owners that Barry Earn got allegedly 4 million out of the guy, Franco Bichetti, and the club was on the cusp of folding, and the fans trust second third had information. They basically played a large part in keeping the pot boiling, keeping it going. Even people I recognise were going to the High Court to get injunctions out, etc. Right. So I've always maintained that there should be a fans representative on the board. At the end of the day, you've got to pick a route, you've got to pick a path, you've got to pick a way. And it depends whether the custodians in charge at the time pick the right path. And then too often you hear stories, and I've experienced it and I've seen it and I've got inside knowledge of it, where they've taken the wrong path and they've been let down, or they've made a complete pig's ear of it, right? But so, I'm a great believer in fans having a say.
Yeah. Okay.
In what happens to their old club, to the extent where it's I think it would be tangible to have it along the same sort of lines as what they've got. I think in Germany, they've got 51% fans. It's fans owned. Certain clubs or all clubs or certain clubs, which is really.
Well, that's worked. It's worked, hasn't it?
But tonight I've been proved right. Very quickly on a point. Tonight I've been proved right on the news. So yet again, I haven't been shown enough respect for my opinions and for my foresight and for my insight and for what I've articulated in the past. And there are a handful of people who've supported me on social media and congratulate me on some of my observations, right? But like I've said, like Italy, if you never had football in this country, you would have civil war, race war, or just people taking to the streets on an industrial basis causing mayhem. It's like opium to the masses. Like religion before that was used to control people. And in certain states in America, it still is used to control people. Football became the new religion, right? What you've seen tonight, you've seen Chelsea supporters on the Fulham Road outside Stamford Gate, which I know not only from playing there, but from the knowledge, the second gate down from the main entrance is called Stamford Gate. And by the guys who actually give them a message, I've done a message for them because they've done a slept out under intents for the Stoll veterans housing. It was in that little vicinity and it was being policed. So you're only talking about like the beginnings of rumblings, but it's my belief that you can knit the two together. There should be more fan involvement, but as a consequence of fan involvement, up to this stage, it's been used to keep control of the masses. You understand? And what I said in the past, if you never had football in this country, you'd have civil unrest.
Well, I mean, I guess just to try and sum up, if Chelsea are pulled out, I mean, obviously that's going to probably new to this European Super League, but it's not going to go away. And it is a product, I guess, of a grossly or hitherto grossly corrupt organisation like UEFA and FIFA that is running football. So
they both had their collar felt for financial, let's say, ambiguities and irregularities. Right, UEFA have felt a stamp out racism. They've just paid lip service to it. Right. So I basically felt to see how they can be left with their track record to bring it all together.